One of the larger questions Bitcoin miners get is what's happening with the hardware market. Is Bitmain going to continue to dominate? Do these new machines have a chance? What's up with AI and Bitcoin mining? Can they work together? Today, we're bringing on Earl Mai of Epic Blockchain to the show. We recorded this last week at Consensus 2024 with CoinDesk. Earl is a longtime veteran in the space, specifically in the hardware side of the business. We discussed Epic's products, the race to make a better ASIC, how Bitmain has such a large advantage over everyone else, and where AI and Bitcoin mining are converging or not converging as well. This show will do a great job of catching you up on what's happening in Bitcoin hardware and even has some insider takes on disagreements on Bitcoin mining, specifically what's happening with Ocean Pool and their claim that Bitmain is causing stale blocks through their pool. Antpool. Before we get into the show, we want to thank Foreman Mining and CleanSpark for being the lead sponsors for the Mining Pod. You'll hear a little bit more from both these sponsors during the program. Okay, let's jump into it. Hey listeners, let's talk about revolutionizing your mining operation with Foreman. This isn't your average management tool. It's an all-in-one solution for reducing costs and significantly boosting your revenue. Foreman brings a cutting-edge dashboard to your fingertips, empowering you with automated energy strategies. This means not only curtailing around real-time prices, but also strategically enhancing your profit margins through demand response. It's about leveraging energy efficiency to its fullest potential. With Foreman, you get a system that scales with your business, inventory management for assets, infrastructure integration, and business intelligence. Foreman elevates the cash flow and production of your entire operation. To see how Foreman can redefine your mining operation standards, visit foreman.mn. With Foreman, you're not just managing a mining operation, you're setting a new standard in the industry.
Accelerated by Compass is the premier accelerator program for Bitcoin mining sites at any stage of development. Our managed services provide expert guidance in site procurement, construction, energy agreements, and mining operations. Compass helps clients meet timelines and expectations for operational excellence, from greenfield to retrofits and everything in between. Don't just mine, excel. Visit compassmining.io now to discover how Accelerated by Compass can power your success.
Are you a retail or institutional investor interested in Bitcoin mining companies? The Miner Mag brings you free data and analysis from all major NASDAQ-listed Bitcoin mining operations to know who stands out. Check out visualized metrics and data-dependent stories at theminermag.com. Hello and welcome to the Mining Pod live from Consensus 2024. We're coming to you from the CoinDesk podcast studio presented by BitGo. Founded in 2013 with the first institutional-grade Bitcoin wallet, BitGo is the gold standard in custody, staking, and settlement. Today, BitGo supports over 800 coins and processes 20% of all Bitcoin transactions by volume. Check them out at bitgo.com. Okay, we're going to take a look into the world of control boards, mining hardware, much more with Epic Blockchain. Welcome to the show, Earl.
Thanks for having me here, Will.
Yeah, really excited for today. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, a little intro, bio, classic podcast questions, and then we have so much to talk about in terms of the hardware market, which I will preface before we get into this. Like, one of my favorite things to talk about in Bitcoin mining is the hardware side. I think some people's eyes roll a little bit, but this is the foundation of the Bitcoin network we're talking about right here.
Yeah, so to put it short, my background is in chip design. So I spent a decade and a half at ATI AMD building GPUs, and one day someone came to me, one of my founding partners came and said, let's go into Bitcoin. And I looked at him and he said, we can do it. And I told him, you don't have the money to do it. And that's how it all started. So we raised money, started Epic Blockchain, really started off in the altcoin space. Our whole business model was flowing around, let's not go after Bitcoin right away. Let's do altcoins when mining was still big, and then proceed to Bitcoin. So over the years, we've progressed from building our own miners, developing our own chips, to providing hardware for anything blockchain. May it be mining, may it be devices for IoT, Web3. We're involved in all those things. And we also do a lot of research. So our company is heavily engineer-based. So about 20 of us are engineers out of the 25. And we're based out of Toronto, North America, in Canada. And that's who we are, and that's what we do.
Awesome. Well, next year, we'll have Consensus in Toronto, so maybe we can do another show there. Let's talk a little bit about some of the products you guys offer for like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Then later in the show, I actually want to go back into that. And then from there, I want to go into some Bitcoin mining stories with you, because I know you've been around the block, and it's cool to get veterans on the show. you guys have seen things other people have not seen.
Seen a lot of things over the years.
Yeah, but tell me about the products really quick, just for some context. Before we dive into that.
Epic Blockchain has three main lines of business. One is what we call fleet enhancement, where we provide control boards, custom firmware, power supplies, so kind of enhance your fleet.
Okay.
Our second line of business is designing custom rigs for mining. A lot of people in the industry like what they can buy off the shelf, but there's people out there who believe that building something better, more suited for their infrastructure, more suited for their needs, and they come to Epic and we build systems. And our final totem, as you could say, is building chips. That's our bread and butter. That's what we've done our whole lives. We haven't done it recently, but we are planning on getting back there one day.
Chips. Okay, that's a big thing that we're going to talk about here is like the silicon wars that are actually happening within Bitcoin mining. People don't talk about it because it's like such a small sector, but I think it's like endlessly fascinating. Let's go into Bitcoin mining origin story for you. So you mentioned earlier that you were at a chip manufacturer, you got interested in Bitcoin, you founded Epic Blockchain. Dig into that a little bit more, and then I do want to hear about some like the earlier stories with Epic Blockchain, circa 2019, 2020.
So my introduction into mining was on a netbook. Someone told me about this Bitcoin network. You could run a node, you could mine, and I turned it on my netbook at the time. These are those small little low-powered Atom processors from way back in the day, and I tried it, and I mined Bitcoin, and that's where it stopped. I made a few cents at the time.
Nice.
It's not like I'm well off because of that mining.
Yeah.
But a few years later, when someone approached me again, a friend, a founder at Epic Blockchain, said we should do this, and I looked back into it. By then, mining moved from CPU to GPU and then bridging onto the FPGA world. And that's when I hooked up a bunch of GPUs that I had access to. I am from ATI-AMD, so we have a nice collection of video cards, and we started mining again. And it looked profitable. And that's when the whole thing caught on. A lot of us did not believe in Bitcoin. It was just too new. We're very corporate-based. We're old guys who worked for 15 years. And telling us to jump off this bridge and go after Bitcoin was scary.
Yeah.
And that's where we are.
Okay, so for the altcoin stuff, you guys attacked that market first. I mean, for those who are kind of newer to the industry, Ethereum was a proof of work coin previously, and there was a lot of different coins that were within like that non-Bitcoin but mineable sector.
Yeah.
Ethereum probably being the most dominant. So I'm assuming Ethereum mining was something you guys looked after, and then a few other coins?
So we've done a few projects over the years, few chips. Ethereum, Sia coin, or Sia coin as people call it. We did custom chips for miners that we don't even publicly state, because that's who we are. We build you a chip, we build you a product, you pay for it, and we deliver. And we've delivered over the last 7 years. So everyone thinks that you can go out there and just buy off-the-shelf stuff to mine. But if you have the capital and you have the plan, you can build your own hardware, and we can help you do that. And that's where the altcoin space really kind of moved forward. Back then, there was Ethereum that was big, and then you had Bitcoin, obviously. But there was a slew of coins that were profitable from an ASIC design point of view that you could go after if you were the only one. If you were to take those machines and sell it to the public, you would just kill yourself by the end of it. So a lot of these...
Why is that? Why would you kill yourself?
There's only one piece of the pie.
Yeah.
And it gets divided every time a miner is released.
Yeah.
And if we produce 10,000 miners, back in the day, what would happen is someone would sell you 1,000 miners, but go turn around and sell another 10,000 to the next guy, and your piece of the pie just shrank overnight. And that was a business model that a lot of manufacturers to this day still do. So a new coin comes out, they produce a machine, but they never tell you how many. And it's a fallacy. Everyone buys it because the numbers today look wonderful.
Yeah.
But a week from now, 2 weeks from now, where are those numbers as you see this hash rate constantly increase?
Yeah.
So working with private miners, building custom hardware was a niche business that was fun for us. Because it's not just the same algorithm that you see today, which is SHA-256 or ETH hash at that time. You had all these unique algorithms that someone in the blockchain space decided to make proof of work on.
Yeah.
And some had legs, some had math behind them.
Yeah.
Some were just a mishmash of algorithms, like the whole X11, X15 type algorithms.
Gotcha.
So it was a fun time, and there was a lot of money flowing in the space. But as we see it today, mining slows down.
Yep.
Right? Proof of work has gone away for various reasons why people argue it shouldn't exist. Proof of stake is better, according to some people. I don't believe so.
Yeah.
But everyone's view is different, right? So that's where we are.
Okay, so no, that's some interesting background context. Let's jump to Bitcoin mining itself. How do you guys go from the altcoin space to jumping into Bitcoin, which, for some context, it's basically dominated by two companies. Bitmain, huge percentage market, I would say like 78%, and then MicroBT, kind of the end of that market at 20%, and then there's, of course, like a few other players in there as well. But how did you guys decide, like, hey, we want to jump into Bitcoin mining and leave the altcoin market behind?
So it kind of changed over time. In the beginning, we were doing altcoins, and altcoins were falling off. A lot of the problems we see with blockchain is no one's using it.
Yeah.
And you can have a network, a layer one, but if no one's using it, what happens next?
Yeah.
And then the mining kind of dies down because there's not enough rewards, because the coin price depreciates. So we had to look elsewhere. And the only kind of proof of work left, well, to this day for us, remains Litecoin or script mining or Dogecoin. BTC mining, may it be for Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, or some derivatives of that.
Yeah.
And that's where we are today, right? So we had to kind of branch into there.
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of time doing chip development, where to a point we would start vetting other companies that were doing Bitcoin ASICs.
Yeah.
The process of building an ASIC is something we know well. It's a long, slow, tedious process.
Yeah.
But what we were building was SHA-256. It's 100 lines of code that you could review over and over again, but now you're just converting it to a circuit.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not overly complex, but if you look at it, Bitmain's done this for generations. And where are they today versus where were they years ago?
Yeah.
You kind of have to figure out how they got there. So we started reviewing and partnering with a lot of companies that wanted to get into the space. We decided internally that the capital required would be a gamble. You're betting the house on a product. Our business model was based upon the fact that someone would pay us to develop and we would deliver.
Yeah.
Right. So there was that risk taking. So after reviewing a bunch of chips, some were fake, some had no legs, some guys didn't know what they were doing, and some guys were truly advanced. We started partnering with them. And one of the first Bitcoin ASICs we got to work with was Intel. So Intel as a company produced 2 generations of ASICs, and they were giving it a second go. Their first time around, we talked to them, and it was a very interesting conversation. There were a bunch of guys who knew how to make a chip, but couldn't build a system, couldn't build firmware. Having the chip only doesn't get you anything in this space. And Intel went off to sell their chips to various companies, and Epic provided systems and solutions for them. And that was our first foray into Bitcoin. Our running joke at the company is we've built a product on 7 nanometer, 5 nanometer, and eventually 3 nanometer without having to pay the cost of taping out those chips, taping out the process of making that mask and ordering wafers. Right?
Let's talk about that process, actually. Again, you said this earlier, like, you know how to build an ASIC. Epic knows how to build an ASIC. You guys know how to build the ASIC chip, and then you guys know how to build the whole form factor as well. So tell me a little bit about that process, that learning curve, and maybe just describe what the sort of parts that we're talking about here for an audience that's not familiar.
The chip design process, in a nutshell, in a high-level summary, is you have to build something. In this case, it's the SHA-256 algorithm. Well known, the code's documented all over the internet. You can find reference hardware code there from FPGA mining back in 2014. So everyone can see it. But now you take that code and you have to make it into this physical piece of silicon. The circuit involved there can either be done by automated tools, it can be drawn by hand like back in the day, and it can be done through a mixture of the two. So those are the 3 approaches. We call them digital, which is what I prefer because I like doing complex designs, GPUs, video manipulation, 3D gaming. Then you have mixed signal, which kind of uses both of them. A little bit of custom work, a little bit of actual digital work to enhance your flow. And then the full custom work is where Bitcoin chips are today. And that's a completely different beast. So you take this code, you make a circuit, and then you design the full chip with a circuit, and then you go make a mask set. The mask set allows you to mass produce these chips in volume. And the mask sets are the most capital intensive part of this whole process. Everyone looks at them, how much is it going to cost? The numbers are safely guarded in the industry because the foundries give everyone different numbers to make sure whoever says it leaked it, right? But you're looking in the orders of tens of millions to produce a mask set at 5, 4, 3 nanometers nowadays. And you take that and you mass produce chips. And then there's a whole back-end process of taking this piece of silicon, testing it, packaging it, and then finally putting it onto a board where you get an actual device in the end.
In the competitive world of Bitcoin mining, one name stands out: CleanSpark, America's Bitcoin miner. At CleanSpark, efficiency isn't just a goal, it's our standard. Our sophisticated facilities are built and led by expert teams who care about Bitcoin and the communities we work in. Scale? We've mastered it. Our large-scale operations have set us apart in the industry as examples of community-oriented building. Our track record speaks for itself. We navigate the complexities of the new economy with precision and with skill, continuously achieving operational milestones. Curious about how we do it? We invite you to discover the story behind CleanSpark's success at cleanspark.com.
What has made, this is going back to your comment earlier about Bitmain, what has made them better than other people at it, and how hard is it to compete at the levels and standards we're seeing with the Bitmains and micro-BTs today?
So the way the foundries work is TSMC in their early days basically had a lot of customers in the crypto space, especially on the mining side, and TSMC doesn't like the whole ups and downs of crypto.
Yeah.
They like the schedule, they like to say commitment, and the volume. These customers would come in and say, I need more right now. So TSMC in the end said, we can't do this. You guys are going to fill what we can't use, but you're never going to get proper allocation. So that went away eventually when Bitmain decided we can only support a few of you. And out of TSMC China, you have Bitmain. That's why you saw the micro-BTs and the other companies move to Samsung. And in North America, it's an open field. In the rest of Asia, it's still an open field. So out of China, a lot of the original companies, the Canaans, the Bitbangs, eBang from back in the day, Silicon, they all came out of that same region, and they're like, we can't do business with you like this, right? So that's how TSMC as a foundry chose a partner, which gave a technological lead to Bitmain. So that's one thing, the foundry. It's what we rely on to make these chips. We design them, but we don't manufacture them. We go to a foundry to do it. May it be TSMC, Samsung, or even Intel today. There's a few others in China as well that are not as popular. But now, Bitmain has access to the best technology, and they have the capital to try. And that trying part is what separates them from the rest. If you look at their history on how many 7-nanometer tapeouts they did quite a few. They did a shotgun approach, is what we call it, where they just tried everything and hope something sticks. So I don't know if you know that 7-nanometer...
That's really interesting.
The S19 generation has a few different chip types.
Definitely.
Even though it's the 19th generation, and those are the shotguns that they had. So you had the S19, then you had the J. Now you have a further iteration of that they have out. That they're
J Pro, J Pro Plus, and then
some of those are the same chips, but some of those are really iterations of that same thing, fine tuning it. Right, but the original S19, S19 Pros, were bad. They did not hit what Bitmain was targeting, so that's why they tried again. As a smaller company, if you're trying to compete against them, you're paying tens of millions of dollars for the mass set, and you fail, you call it quits. So we believe Bitmain's strategy of shotgunning and iterating with capital makes them better than everyone else. We have teams today developing Bitcoin ASICs. Every time we go into a bull run, there's a bunch of chip companies that will come out, start building the chips, and in a few years, you'll see where they land. And then it's try one, try two. So I mentioned before, Intel had 2 tries at it. That's 2 tries publicly. I don't know how many they did behind the scenes.
That's a good point.
So that's what makes Bitmain so good at this. They have the technology access. They have the engineers to do it, even though a lot of their engineers have spun off to great competitive companies. And now what you're seeing is Bitmain has a nice, comfortable lead, and they've been dominant for a while. And everyone's waiting for them to either falter, stutter, or you'll see what I believe is convergence in this industry. All chips will be made at similar type foundries, and we're not going to see anything better than the other drastically. Processors, GPUs today, we used to race the gigahertz war. I'm slightly older than you. So I remember my first gigahertz processor where we thought we're going to get to 10 gigahertz processors eventually, then 20 gigahertz, but it stopped. It all converged, and then you look at the other value adds that processors brought. Multi-core CPUs were a big thing now, where we have 16 cores on our CPUs. Do we need it?
Yeah.
That's the only way they could branch out. We're not going to 10 gigahertz. So the chip-wise, I believe we're all going to converge similarly on some joules per terahash. May it be 10, 8, 5.
Yeah.
But then that's it. Everyone's going to be so similar. You're going to have an 8 nanometer, 8 joules per terahash from Bitmain, and a 9 joules per terahash from their competitor. Is there that big of a difference anymore? You have to find the next phase of differentiation. And that's where Epic is trying to play in, where the system, the firmware, tie-ins with the infrastructure is where we're going to play.
Right? I love that. Okay, I want to go back to ask a clarifying question from earlier. So you're talking about like the chip level, and they did the shotgun approach. Was it on the chip level that they were kind of fine-tuning things, or was it on the form factor as well with some of the other things, firmware?
It's all about Bitmain's firmware has been notorious for a while now. So
I wondered if you could pick that up.
It's not the firmware side that they finally are taking it more seriously. Epic produces firmware that differentiates it from the stock. But from a chip design point of view, they do a few things that are risky. I don't know if you look down at the board levels, all the repair guys should know that Bitmain's chips run at 1.2 volts, which doesn't make sense for a 4 nanometer chip where the standard cells, the actual transistors turn on and off at 0.25, 0.3 volts. So why is this chip running at 1.2 volts? Everyone's like, I don't know, that's what Bitmain made, right? But really inside that one chip, there's 4 chips stacked in series. Right? And doing 4 chips stacked in series on the same piece of silicon requires an artistic type of work. It's voodoo science sometimes. And they were able to successfully do that. And there's reasons for them doing that. Higher voltage, lower current, less copper needed to bring power to the chip, more efficiency coming out.
Interesting.
But there's 4 in there. Companies like Intel did 2. And then there's companies that are not going to gamble on that risk for the first generation. So you have the other chip manufacturers like Auradine and a few others. They're just going to do 1. And you have an efficiency loss right there off the top of the bat because of your design choice. And that's what I mean by they were able to try to do these things to eke out and squeeze out a little more. Right?
Let's talk about, you brought up a ton of great things I want to get to. So the first thing, let's talk about like being a startup and competing against the giant. So like if anyone's seen like what's that show in the 80s about the computer wars in the 80s, Catch Fire, it's like Halt and Catch Fire. I don't know if you've seen it, but they talk about like the first generations of PCs, like laptops, and how they're like trying to build these things out. There was obviously like sort of like an 80-20 market at that time. It seems very similar in Bitcoin mining. How do you as a startup sort of compete against these larger guys? And what's the relationship with these teams? Is it competitive? Is it like elbows, or is it like pretty friendly, sharing information?
So what we've seen is the space is dominated by Bitmain. You mentioned that before. And there's no way you can compete against them directly. Early on, when we were designing altcoin chips, we learned our lesson. We learned something of a concept called a paper tiger. My boss, Jim Cito, lots of stories.
Shout out to Jim.
Paper tigers, I'm like, what is a paper tiger? They will announce a product just to compete against you. And that announcement alone will make the consumer pause and wait to see which one comes out. But you need pre-sales. So the whole industry was based on pre-sales. We sold more miners before we finished the project than we did after we finished, because there was a slight crash in crypto during that time frame when we finished. But a paper tiger, you announce it just to slow down your competitor. And there would be no pre-sales now because you don't know which one to go with. And back in the early days of mining, paper tigers were notorious. So there's no way you could compete directly with them. So we chose the other path. We stayed stealth. We did private mining. We supplied to these private miners because we did announce a project. And somehow a team in China announced a competing project, and they used my spec down to the rounded numbers that I put in there. I'm like, I can't compete against that. And one of my largest customers came up to us and said, that guy's making the same thing, but it's cheaper. But he wasn't sophisticated or educated enough to know that that's not going to exist. And to this day, you see a lot of paper tigers. There's a lot of noise in the space, right? So competing against Bitmain, we could never do head on. So we decided to work with them in a way, making custom control boards, custom firmware to improve their machines, better power supplies for the use case, may it be immersion, may it be ultra high efficiency power supplies, so that you can eke out more out of your hardware, make it last a little longer. So never against, but using that knowledge, we're now building systems that compete directly against them. Right? So that's been our approach.
And some of the systems you mentioned earlier are like fleet refresh, control boards, firmware, but you guys also are building your own ASIC, if I'm not incorrect there.
We don't publicly say we're building our own ASIC. It's on the wish list.
On the wish
If anyone is out there and wants to fund us $30 to $50 million,
I'd love
we'll
to throw you some
entertain
money,
it.
but no, I don't have any. But tell me a little about that. Like, so you guys are focusing on like these smaller aspects. What are some parts, and how do you guys go about building those things?
So one of the big things that Bitmain has is a huge supply chain and buying power. 120 millimeter fans is my perfect use case for that one.
Okay.
They are very popular for certain applications, but the PC fans are not the same as these industrial fans that we use for mining.
Yeah.
But Bitmain made them the standard. WhatsMiner moved to a slightly bigger fan, the 140 mils.
Yep.
But they're not as popular as Bitmain fans because a whole industry was spurred because of that one fan size. You had resale of new fans, better fans that you could buy from some other suppliers, but Bitmain created an industry. And it kind of pigeonholes your design philosophy. You have to use that fan because I can get it cheaper.
Okay.
Right? So when you talk about parts and supplies, a lot of it does come from Asia, from China region. And that buying power of Bitmain kind of creates smaller sub-industries of these parts.
Interesting.
Power supplies, as much as people think that you can grab a power supply from anywhere, it's not like the PC industry where you can grab a gold, bronze power supply from different vendors and swap it in. There's only a few players in the power supply industry, and they all know each other. And that's how the game is played. So then you have to play nice. I want to build a power supply. We all know that building a better power supply will cost more money. You can't sell your machine for more. That's a problem. So you have to play that game. And then you have various vendors that you can go to. But in the end, we're all building something very similar. So you get pigeonholed once again to using that power supply, even though you don't want to use it. Right?
And you can see this in a lot of like the newer units that have been coming out, like the Auradine unit. The form factors, a lot of these things are very similar.
So that's one of the things we're seeing in this industry is everyone's kind of tired of building infrastructure just for this, I call it a shoebox miner. And you build infrastructure for that shoebox, but that's not the best way to build infrastructure. So we talked a lot with a lot of miners out there and really asked them the question, what's your ideal miner? What would it look like? Can we build it for you? And they come back to us saying, we can save a lot of money if we do this, this, this. May it be dropping the PDU, moving to three-phase, which Bitmain finally did. But there's talks of using higher-end voltages and distribution of DC voltage at a data center level that some of the data centers actually use. Or can we cut out the PDU altogether? Why do we need it? Right? If you cut a PDU open and look at it carefully, it's a bunch of solder and wires. There's nothing else in there. And plugs. Right? So moving towards that, our customers are asking us for different types of miners. And I think that's where the industry will go once the chip consolidation occurs. What can we do better as an industry? A better miner? Does it have to be as loud? Is immersion the future? Hydro? Those are the questions all out there that we're seeing right now.
To go back to the parts thing with the PDUs, PSUs, hash boards, hash rate, control boards, how do you choose which vendors to work with in Asia? And what do you know? How do you not get scammed? And how do you know you're working with like the best people and you're getting the best product from them?
So when you're buying parts and components in Asia, there's a few ways to do it. I was just in China about 3 months ago to visit some of our vendors. So we have a list of parts that we use that we know cost a lot or we use a lot of. And initially, you don't have that buying power to go buy directly from the vendor. You go through a broker. And the broker is what usually finds the parts for you, charges a little bit extra, just like buying a miner, but they do qualification. You send it to a lab and you qualify those parts. And you do find that there are a lot of forgeries or secondhand parts or parts that don't meet spec. So trying to find the right broker to do business with. One of our partners is Sunnyside Digital, who is a broker for miners. We trust them because we know that we're paying you a price, but you're going to get us what we asked for. And that's the kind of thing that we look for initially when we're sourcing parts. But the second stage is once you're big enough, go talk to the vendor, go meet with them, get your own sales channel with them. And that's how you secure parts. Our processors are from STM Micro, a French company that does automotive processors and the likes of it. And we source our parts directly from them. We secure our allocation, and at least we know those are never our long poles. And then you work down the list because looking for these parts, sometimes they're just sold out. Control boards for Bitmain went through many iterations of different processors, starting with the Xilinx FPGA core to the Beagle Bone. So now even using their own AI chip for some reason inside their control boards. And they struggle with the same thing. They need to secure their source and try to source those parts and make longevity.
Okay.
We chose an automotive part because anything in the automotive industry has to be supported for decades. So it's never going away.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the next generation of ASICs right now. So we have Block saying they're working on an open source unit of some sort, and then we have Auradine working on theirs, Chain Reaction. We've had all these guys on the podcast besides Block so far, but
Chain Reaction is a partner of Epic. We're working on them with their next generation design. That's coming out later this year. Auradine has announced that they're going from their latest chip to a new spin down to 3 nanometers, I don't believe. So they went from 4 to 3, and they're going to have a chip by the end of the year as well. And then finally you have Block. So all these companies, I see them from the last time around.
Yeah.
And now when I'm here at this conference, even though it's consensus, not really mining, I've met with 2 other chip vendors who are going to make it another go. Right?
Really?
So
okay.
This space will be very busy. I hope all of them do well because each one of them will need a system and firmware, and that's where Epic is.
Okay. So they're giving it another go. That's an interesting thing to think about because the Intel story was, they 2017, 2018 they did it, and then again now in 2021, 2022.
So Intel as a company aren't focused on Bitcoin mining.
Yeah.
They're focused on other things. And with AMD, I'm a longtime AMD fan and former employee, started taking their pie away.
Yeah.
They started shifting their focus from these extra projects to focus back down on what they need to focus on.
Gotcha.
Will it come back? I don't know. There's been rumors. It's actively still researched. I know that at Intel.
But that didn't scare a lot of people away, or did it scare people away? And there's just a few people bubbling up at this point.
You learn that was the first kick of the can, second kick of the can.
Yeah.
They think they have the secret sauce now to go.
Okay.
If they do it or not, I don't know.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about how you see competition for these new guys popping up. Do you think how are they going to enter the market?
So from a chip point of view, they will all design a Bitcoin chip that can mine. May it be more efficient, less efficient? That's what we'll have to wait and see. But in the end, they need to make a system. And if you're just going to try with the traditional Shoebox, a Bitmain machine, a WhatsMiner machine, even a Canaan machine, they're established. Go buy that. But now can they enter the market with Epic, with another partner to kind of go more custom? Build something towards the infrastructure. I think that's where they're going to have to lean towards. If they have the best chip in the world, then they don't care.
Okay.
But I believe everyone's going to be around there. We have BitDeer, who's coming out with a
this year. Should have mentioned BitDeer as well. They had their announcement this
Tether made an announcement of 150 investment. I think JP, one of my engineers, told me earlier today.
Yeah.
So they're entering the market, and I was in their event in Dubai, and they've got a long-term plan. They publicly stated that they will be accountable and open with how many chips they produce, what chips they produce, and what they're doing. So I find that an interesting approach. Instead of we don't know what they're doing behind the scenes. Are they overproducing, overselling? But that's new to the industry, and it's something to look forward to. Transparency is, I think, a lot of complaints that people have with these machines. No one knows where they come from, how they're made. They just show up on a pallet one day.
Right.
Need ASIC help? Check out Bitmian, one of Bitmain's certified repair shops located in Washington State with satellite offices in Colorado, Oklahoma, and Texas. PSUs, hashboards, immersion setups, in and out of warranty repair, Bitmian has you covered. Want to train your technicians? Bring Bitmian to your site for hands-on training in the art of ASIC repair, complete with Bitmain AMTC certification. Contact Bitmian today at dan@vmasic.com. Again, that's dan@vmasic.com. When you think of ASIC repair, think Bitmian.
There was a tweet from Bitcoin Mechanic. He's the CTO of Ocean Pool, a new Bitcoin mining pool that was backed by Jack Dorsey. He's a co-founder of Twitter and the co-founder and CEO of Block, formerly Square. And Bitcoin Mechanic put out a tweet saying that Bitmain is block withholding in an interesting way against competitors are causing, I'm going to leave it to you to kind of describe it a little more, but basically causing stale work to be propagated from pools. This is a pretty technical and nuanced part of the conversation, but we got the right guest to talk about it.
So I got a lesson on this after talking to one of my engineers with us, JP Comagnone, who basically we argued back and forth over breakfast this morning, trying to figure out where the advantage is in doing this. And from what we understand, what the mechanic is claiming is that certain machines are mining empty blocks longer. It doesn't mean they're not mining, doesn't mean they're not making money, but if they do find a block, they're not going to receive the transaction fees as well, which is a significant part of the block reward nowadays after the halving. That being said, this is only happening on machines that are running stock firmware, but not mining on AntPool or an AntPool subsidiary. The pool space is very consolidated. A lot of the smaller pools can't survive with how things are and the pay structures that are being made. So a lot of them are using the same block template as AntPool. AntPool delivers it out to everyone else. And that delay or no delay, the mechanic is claimed up to 60 seconds. That's 10% of the time where your potential revenue, if you find a block, is going to be less. And that's basically it. How are they doing this? Why are they doing this? Make more money is the theory. How can we prove this? People have been on Twitter, on X, and they're trying to get to the bottom of this. They want people to show more data. But we're trying to figure out how can we prove this. Epic Blockchain writes custom firmware for Bitmain. We send work to these chips. We can show you when the work is received from Stratum, may it be empty or not, and how long it takes to propagate the next piece of work. And we don't know if it's 60 seconds, but it's something we can go measure. And we can measure this on Ocean's Pool, we can measure it on AntPool, and compare. What JP has come up with is, let's take it to another level. Bitmain's never going to print us that information to know what they're sending to their chips. We're just going to do it our way. From a hardware point of view, we're hardware engineers. We're going to scope the lines with a logic analyzer, look at it, and look in real time what's being sent to the boards or not. And we'll decode that and figure it out once and for all. And that will give us the answer. We'll probably provide the data. JP loves the open source community, providing all this data out there, and let other people analyze it from their perspective to give you the answer. I don't know what they're doing exactly. I will provide the information, the data, and someone else can answer that question.
Yeah. Well, so for context here, Bitmain has always been a polarizing company within the Bitcoin industry. I mean, they are the largest, and so there's a competitive advantage there. But there's been things like Amplead and ASIC Boost and things like that they've used in the past to kind of build an even larger advantage over the Bitcoin mining industry and competitors, but also some would say like a nefarious advantage over Bitcoin itself. And so I think there's like a little bit of coloring here, there, which I would lean against and say that we shouldn't like think that it's a negative thing from the start. They might just be trying to like build an advantage for their company, right? And it's an Bitcoin's an open source protocol, so why not do it? But here, when Ocean's claim or Bitcoin Mechanics claim, it seems like they're trying to take advantage of how pool fees work and pool structures work to try to hurt other pools, which would hurt network decentralization, right?
So this is always going on with money.
Yeah.
As long as there's money, you get greed, and you want to extract a little more out. And how can you have an advantage over your competitor?
Yeah.
In the mining space, it's highly competitive, and people will do little things just to get that little advantage over the next person. We're all using the same machine now, but how can I be better than you? One of the early kind of philosophies of this came back to, if I find a block, I'll just hold on to it for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And then I'll announce it to the world. During that 5 seconds, I now have the next block being worked on, and I have a slight advantage over you. And that has been done before. And especially if you're a larger pool, you have that advantage because the odds of you finding the next block are even higher.
Yeah.
And then you basically make everyone waste work. And that's an advantage. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's ways to try to prevent that. There's talk about new Stratum protocols to do things better. But I believe Bitmain is trying to make more money. And if that's what they're doing, how do we fix this?
Yeah.
Do we go down to what they're doing and do version rolling on the chip, which is everyone's been doing since covert and over ASIC Boost?
Yeah.
Or do we block it in a different way?
Yeah.
But someone's got to voice their opinion and tell everyone what's going on.
Yeah.
There's sensitive topics that I was going to discuss. Having pool fees is one thing. What about dev fees?
Yeah.
And that's the other topic that's very sensitive to a lot of people, because the industry for custom firmware is either you pay a dev fee or use their pool and pay no fee, but you're paying somewhere, or you have companies like Marathon and Epic Blockchain now who provide hardware and give firmware for free without a dev fee.
Yeah.
Right. So that's all these little advantages can go back and forth, and the dev fee part, I'll stop there for now because there's a slippery slope that's not 10 minutes won't do.
Yeah, it's a whole other conversation. Okay, but I appreciate what you're saying about the Bitmain part. From my perspective, maybe the opinion doesn't matter, but your business, you're trying to make an edge here. I think within Bitcoin maximalist camps or just certain Bitcoin camps in general, there's this idea that like Bitcoin is a public good. We need to protect it. My opinion is Bitcoin is the most hyper-competitive market on earth. And so if you are a business running a Bitcoin, then you have an obligation to find that edge. And that's how I see what Bitmain might or may not be doing. We still don't know.
We don't know for sure.
It's an allegation still.
I'm actually okay with it. Bitcoin is open.
Yeah.
Everything's there for you to see. Everything's there you can do. They're doing it.
Yeah.
They found a way to make more money. I'm slightly disappointed in myself that I didn't find that myself.
Yeah.
Because I would have tried it, right? I'm curious, right? There's a lot of things in the industry, and it's all about min-max optimizations at this point. It's been here for a while. We've been mining for a while. There hasn't been a large change in the landscape in terms of mining, in terms of what you can eke out and have advantage of. And this is fun.
Yeah.
Right? And now, if this is true or not, once we find out, how can other people now take advantage of this?
Yeah.
That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
Right? It's one thing to know what they're doing, but now can you do it and do it better?
Yeah.
And just like version rolling and ASIC boost back in the day, we all adopted it.
Yeah.
There was a BIP proposal put in to actually put it in there. And so Bitcoin adopted it, right? So things can benefit from these types of situations. But squeezing out that little bit more is all a miner tries to do all day long.
Yep, it's all about the margins in Bitcoin mining. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left. Let's go over to the end game for mining, which you did talk about at the beginning of the show a little bit. You think that like a lot of these ASIC units are going to drift towards very low joule per terahash count. And for those who aren't super familiar, when we talk about Bitcoin mining, we're talking about terahash, which is how much Bitcoin you can kind of squeeze out of the work you're giving to the Bitcoin network. And then these Bitcoin miners obviously consume energy, and we measure that in joules or watts. And oftentimes we say joules per terahash. So how much energy do I use to mine certain amounts of Bitcoin? And we're converging towards like a single digit here right now. So Bitmain's out there with like 15 joules per terahash on the bleeding edge. Most public miners are around 25 joules per terahash, maybe a little bit higher towards 30. And then like your plebs out there like me are, you know, in the 35 and we're just like not making money. But you're seeing convergence towards a low joules per terahash. You're seeing convergence on what these ASIC chips, the individual chips look like. And I'd also say that you're probably seeing convergence on the form factor, to the different parts with it. Where do we go from there? What sort of services what is Bitcoin mining going to look like in 5, 10, 20 years when things have converged like you're foreseeing?
So as you mentioned, we see the industry kind of converging on that efficiency point where a chip will be efficient enough and other things will matter much more. May it be the features of firmware and software that could provide data, telemetry, or even curtailment features. Quick boot times is always an ask for our customers. But we see that those kinds of services being pushed and out being more important.
Yeah.
When you look at it from a big picture, where are there other inefficiencies in this whole mining landscape where we can kind of target and kind of optimize more? We just talked about Bitmain trying to squeeze out a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah.
From a mining point of view, I believe a lot of the large miners build quickly. They build well, build quickly, but now they can go back and look at their infrastructure, and if they're going to expand, how can they make it more efficient? May it be a different form factor miner or a different way of delivering power, those optimizations can make your efficiency better.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where we're going in this industry. So as a chip game, it's great that we're converging. There hasn't been large innovations in the last 3-4 generations of chips beyond the foundries, the chip manufacturers, making chips smaller, more efficient, faster. So now you look at the system as a whole, you look at the infrastructure as a whole, and you start optimizing those one by one. And everyone's got a plan. I've talked to a lot of miners out there, and everyone's got their ideal vision of what a miner should look like. I'm not the guy to tell you what I should build for you. You tell me what your dream is, and we'll make it reality. That's Epic Blockchain. We provide solutions for you. But the funny thing is, everyone's got a different view of it. May it be a larger miner or a megawatt miner. Everyone's got crazy ideas that they believe if I build you this miner, they will build the infrastructure around it, and it will cost them less to build infrastructure. It'll make them more efficient in terms of power delivery. And that will give them their competitive advantage going into the future.
Gotcha.
So Bitcoin mining as a whole, I think, is converging, but you're going to see customizations kind of branch out and very interesting solutions for the next few years. Who's right, who's wrong? I'm not here to tell you that.
Market will find out.
Market will find out. If it works, it works. And 5 to 10 years from now, you will see that everyone's vision of what they think is the best infrastructure will come to fruition.
Tell me about the AI HPC sector. That's obviously very hyped. Is it overhyped, underhyped, and how do you see it sort of being built out within Bitcoin mining?
Running joke at our office has always been, why don't we just tack the letters AI at the end of Epic blockchain?
Epic AI.
And, and we might as well just move into AI because we are GPU developers, GPU designers by trade. But I think the AI space is something very competitive for a Bitcoin miner to try to enter. We've heard a lot of announcements of people who want to move into that space as a public company or private company. But I don't know. You've been to a few sites. I think I've been to a few with you as well. Not all of them are friendly to these high-end GPU-style components.
Coops. Yeah.
They are chicken coops. We've gotten returns of machines with bugs that are flying out of them still alive. Like I don't know where these
some with moss grown into the fans. You know,
humidities are not good for electronics. But there's a few of them that I strongly believe that can do that pivot. Remember, power is one of the biggest assets of these large miners. And if they have power, they can use that for either Bitcoin mining or do that for AI computational inference trading. So I think that's what it comes down to. Today, there was an announcement with Core and CoreWeave, Core Scientific and CoreWeave, that they've done a trial and they are branching into the AI space as well. And I think their building of that data center makes sense because they have certain facilities that are better for that. None of us are going to do AI computational workloads in South America or Africa yet because the infrastructure is not there. So not everyone can do that pivot, but the ones that can, I think, can really hedge against their Bitcoin. Either you do Bitcoin mining or you're going to do computational workloads. And your power is going to be used either way. Which one makes more money, we'll decide.
Well, that's one of my favorite things about Bitcoin mining is like you kind of have this elephant, right? And like every part you touch is a little bit different. It's kind of going along with the analogy. And for Bitcoin miners, you can like think of the ways of building revenue. It can come from so many different ways. You talk about dev fees, you talk about firmware fees, you talk about energy generation, you talk about the Bitcoin mining subsidy itself. There's now extraneous services on top of Bitcoin, whether it be like Marathon Slipstream service, or we can even go to like Ordinals games. There's now MAV on top of Bitcoin, and you just mentioned AI. So there's tons of different ways of building this out. It does seem, just like kind of put a bow on this, it does seem like you're seeing like the more practical brick and mortar Bitcoin miners converging on one sort of scope, but then having tons of different extraneous services out of that.
So you see a bunch of companies kind of branch off into different things. Slipstream from Marathon. Marathon now is having two divisions, so to speak, one focused on Bitcoin itself and one focused on hardware and infrastructure. You have Core Scientific branching between traditional mining, hosting even, they're getting out of hosting slowly, and then now providing AI services. So they're back to hosting. Right? So they spent a long time moving away and self-mining, and now it makes more sense to pivot. Right? And they have options. They have power. They are supporting the network. They're doing work that's invaluable to all of us that we take for granted. Right? Despite block times being 10 minutes. That's another story for another chat. But that is securing the network. And that's what makes Bitcoin so interesting.
Okay, well, thanks so much for joining us today. Where can people find Epic Blockchain and yourself?
You can find us online at epicblockchain.io. We have our site there. You can see our products. We can talk about the services that we provide. If anyone's out there who's looking to make custom hardware, custom chips, custom solutions, reach out to us. We're at conferences. We'll be in Mining Disrupt in about a month's time. So hopefully I'll see people there.
Are you on Twitter?
I do not use Twitter. I stay off social media.
Good man.
I consume it.
Okay.
But I don't post because it only can get me in trouble. That's what I've learned. I'm slightly older than you, and I've learned my lesson with social media.
Appreciate that. Well, thank you so much for joining the Mining Pod today. That's a wrap from the Mining Pod live from Consensus 2024. I'm Will Foxley. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back here in a moment.